Hello friends, this is Carrie and welcome back to I Like Reddit channel. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. Friends, I decided to do something different today. I know you hear me say this all the time and usually ends up being entitled people or something like that, but back in the day, when I first started this channel, I would pick stories from subreddits that weren't entitled people or entitled parents, just to mix it up a bit, because I like a lot of those different subreddits, but many of you guys really enjoyed the entitled people and the entitled parents, so I kind of just stuck with it. And several of you guys in the comments section wanted a mix of stories or some different subs, but not everybody likes the petty revenge or the pro revenge or that sort of thing, and so it's always nice to have maybe one or two stories in there mixed in with some entitled people. In today's video, we have 3 stories. Yes, 2 of the stories are technically out of entitled parents, though one of them is cross-posted with stolen seats, which is a favorite of mine, and another favorite of a lot of you folks, myself included, is just no HOAs. So let's begin. Our first story is by Kibu Fox. HOA in the city contract, aka how to get an HOA fined. So some backstory to this. I don't live inside an HOA, thank the divines, but I have had some dealings with them. I studied environmental engineering in college and have a degree with a specialization in water treatment systems. Normally though, that's not my day job. Even so, recently a friend of mine who works with one of the neighboring cities asked me if I wouldn't mind doing some tests for water pollution in a waterfowl preservation area. There had been some strange die-off events going on and the city was trying to figure out where the source of the pollution was coming from. I'd be operating under a special contract from the city and was given access to any location along the waterfowl area within reason to perform my tests. I won't go into details on how the test works. They're involved and they can be a pain in the butt, but suffice to say that I started taking water and soil samples from likely sources along the waterfowl preserve's borders. This showed me that there was a notable amount of nitrate and phosphate in the water, which I surmised was affecting the birds. Now to find the source. I followed the river up its length, passing a number of housing sites, a couple of apartments, and an odd settling pond. Over the course of several weeks and a barrage of tests, these were all ruled out as sources. The further I went up the river, though, the stronger the concentration became, to the point that it was dangerous for humans to be in contact with the water. We're talking Superfund type pollution. This was last summer. As I waded up along this area, I heard some splashing and the sound of kids playing in the water. Not good. Not good at all. Turning the bend, I came face to face with a small dock leading into the water and 4 or 5 kids taking turns jumping off of it into the water. The heavily polluted and dangerous water. There's some lady sitting on the dock watching them, and I approach her. I forgot the exchange, but it boiled down to me telling her that I'm from the city and based on some of what had been found that the children were banned from swimming in the river. The lady tried arguing the point until I told her that I'm going to call the marshal, code enforcement, to have the area barricaded off, and she could explain her complaints to him. She grabbed her kids and scuttled off. The marshal did arrive and found the dock wasn't built to proper code standards and condemned it, forcing the HOA who built it to have it demolished within a week, or the city was going to do it and they'd have to front the bill. That still left the matter of the pollution. That's where things got weird. Once I passed the HOA subdivision, all the pollution vanished. I must have done 5 or 6 tests to verify this, but yeah, no pollution. So I had my culprit. Next question was figuring out what they were doing. That's where my investigative side comes in. With the help of the marshal, I started going around to the properties of the HOA and talking with residents. It was a few simple questions like, do you know if they're fertilizing the grass, and when do they do this, and do you know the type of fertilizer they use? Just gathering evidence. Remember the lady from earlier? Turns out she was the HOA president. I only found out after she called the police on the marshal and myself, reporting strange men wandering around her neighborhood. She called them something like 4 or 5 times a day before the police flat out told her, they work for the city and if you keep calling, we're gonna charge you. That didn't stop her from following us around in her car and taking pictures with her phone. Eventually, We spoke to one older gentleman that broke the case, as it were. The HOA president had been fining people for not having perfectly green grass. We were in a drought at the time, so there's no surprise there. After several people in the subdivision got fined by the city for watering their grass, she had taken matters into her own hands. She had first tried contracting a landscaper to spray the lawns with fertilizer, but due to various EPA regulations, he apparently refused. The homeowner couldn't be certain what this lady had done next, but a couple of days after that, some guys turned up with a large farm-type trailer of liquid and sprayed every single foot of grass the HOA controlled, even right down to the water's edge. With the homeowner's permission, I took several soil samples from his property and then samples from the common areas that adjoined the grassy area beside the river and dock. It took a full week for the results to come back, but I had my answer. This lady had some contractors or someone spray farm-grade fertilizer on the grass. This particular fertilizer is heavily controlled by the EPA, and it requires a special license to possess, much less use. I presented all of my evidence to the contact at the city and laid out how serious the damage was, and that I was legally obligated to report the HOA to the state regulatory board for gross violations. My contact took my paper and paid me for my services, thanking me, but also noting that if it went to court, I would be needed to testify about my findings. Epilogue. The court was originally scheduled for March of 2020, but it never came to that. The HOA president entered a plea deal with the state where she and the HOA was required to pay for the environmental cleanup of the river as well as restitutions to the state. The fine alone topped close to $250,000, and the cleanup, still ongoing, is expected to break $1 million itself. The HOA president got the boot, while the HOA itself was, last I heard, facing being dissolved by the state due to multiple cases of negligence and inept management. I don't know how they came in contact with the fertilizer though. I suspect some of the charges against the HOA president had something to do with that. Want to know what the sad thing is though? If the HOA simply contacted the city or the state, they would have been given a list of approved fertilizers to use, which both wouldn't have polluted the surrounding water and wouldn't have put them on the hook for the environmental disaster. The number is right on the city and state website. The HOA just couldn't be bothered to look it up. If you're enjoying the content so far, please put a heart emoji in the comments section down below. Our next story is posted by Painsomnia. Karen expects total strangers to babysit her child even after being told no. Update at the bottom. So this was a weird one. Not my story, but my friend who messaged me right after this happened to vent because WTF? Cast, Karen, entitled mother, SK, sweet kid, F, my friend. So Karen moved into the apartment next to my friend's a couple of weeks ago. Karen had struck up short, polite conversations with my friend just 2 times in that period, with the second being yesterday, the day before the whole fiasco unfolded. This morning at about 9 a.m., while my friend was having a nice Saturday breakfast, she gets up at 6 a.m. on weekdays, so this was a weekend lie-in for her. Someone started aggressively banging on her door. When my friend answered, Karen was standing there with Sweet Kid, a 5-year-old girl, who had a backpack on. Sounding very flustered, she said she was sorry to have to ask, with no notice, could my friend please watch Sweet Kid for a few hours, because Karen had somewhere really important to be. Now, something you need to understand about my friend is that she can't stand kids, and has no idea how to deal with them. Like, she tenses up and gets super awkward if a kid so much as waves at her at a supermarket. Friend is also disabled. She uses a motorized wheelchair and sometimes a walking cane for short distances or when she's just pottering around her house. She lives with her girlfriend, who is also her carer. Her chronic illness involves fainting spells and a lot of brain fog, so by her own accounts, she's absolutely not someone who should be left in charge of a child. Karen has seen my friend using both her wheelchair and her cane, and has seen my friend's girlfriend, who was at work when this all went down, helping her in and out of the car. So my friend responded with a firm no, explaining her medical conditions, which meant that Sweet Kid would not be safe in her care, and she was not well enough at the moment to have any guests, let alone an unattended child in her home. Karen immediately flipped from pleading and simpering to hand-on-hip indignation at this point, accusing my friend of faking her disabilities. Because, of course, if she can walk at all, then she obviously doesn't actually need a wheelchair, right? And threatening to report her to Centerlink, welfare, if my friend didn't watch Sweet Kid for her. Never mind the fact that my friend isn't on welfare. Her girlfriend has a high-paying job, and my friend works somewhere between part-time and full-time hours from home most weeks. She's a freaking machine, and I don't know how she manages to get it all done. Newsflash. Not all disabled people are unable to work. Although, of course, getting employers to actually hire you is another matter, because ableism. So my friend basically said, I'm not on Centerlink and I don't appreciate being blackmailed. Find another babysitter because I'm not it, and closed the door on her. Karen kept banging on the door for a little bit longer, but eventually left. About 20 minutes later, my friend heard a very faint, timid tapping on her front door. She said if she hadn't been so close to it, she probably wouldn't have heard it at all. She sighed heavily, having already guessed what was happening. She opened the door, and there she was. Sweet Kid, who had clearly been crying, clutching the shoulder straps of her little backpack. She said very softly, "Mummy said I could stay here today." Now, like I said, my friend cannot stand kids, but even she said that Sweet Kid was an absolute darling throughout the entire fiasco, and the most she ever did was cry, because her mother was clearly a freaking monster. Karen had driven off and sent Sweet Kid to my friend's door, clearly thinking that if she left my friend with no alternatives, she would just play along and babysit Sweet Kid for her, especially since my friend literally had no way of contacting Karen. Wrong. My friend escaped abusive parents at a young age, and this stuff made her absolutely furious. She got Sweet Kid settled in front of the TV with a drink and some snacks and called the police. Yeah, my neighbor just abandoned her 5-year-old outside of her apartment, and the kid showed up at my door asking to come in. When the officers arrived, my friend told them the full story, and while they were appalled, she said they weren't surprised. One said, "You'd be shocked at how not rare this kind of thing is," which is honestly kind of the worst part of it all. The officers took Sweet Kid with them, and they were really sweet to her, explaining that she wasn't in any trouble and that she had done the right thing, and that they were going to look after her until they were able to find where her mommy had gone. My friend found out later that they were able to contact Sweet Kid's father, who is currently working on finalizing the divorce from Karen, and was also appalled, but not remotely surprised by what she had done. Here's hoping that he gets full custody of Sweet Kid after all of this. Update. Hey guys, thank you so much for the awards and all the interest in my friend's story. I messaged my friend asking if there was any updates, and oh boy, that was an emphatic yes. This morning, she had another knock on her door, only it was the dad this time with Sweet Kid in tow. He went there to apologize for what his ex had done, and so he and Sweet Kid could thank my friend for looking after Sweet Kid and for calling the police. She said he seemed like a good guy who was clearly putting his kid first in all of this, which was really assuring to hear. He also told my friend that according to his lawyer, her calling the police and handling everything the way that she had basically been a gift-wrapped custody battle win for him, because what kind of court would ever grant Karen custody after she pulled this? His lawyer was over the moon when the dad called him. My friend asked the dad what was so important that Karen had abandoned her own daughter over it. Are you guys ready for this? It's so cliche. It was a freaking nail appointment. She brought Sweet Kid several times previously and demanded that the staff babysit her, and refused to even acknowledge her kid during her me time. When she'd called yesterday morning to book her last-minute appointment, because Karen's, the staff put their foot down and told her she could no longer bring her kid to the appointment and would be refused service if she did so. The dad also said that Karen had shown up so late for the appointment that they had refused to see her, again because Karen's. So she abandoned her daughter because she wanted her me time getting her nails done. The father told my friend that me time was an excuse Karen used to ignore their kid basically anytime she felt like it. Do not talk to me during my me time, etc. The dad also asked my friend if she would be okay to help with the custody battle. He said he understood that her health wasn't great and that his lawyer had said a written statement would also be fine. He said while it probably wasn't essential since they had the police report, he wanted to have as much evidence on his side as possible, just to be sure, of course. My friend agreed. Karen has yet to show up at my friend's door screaming at her, so my friend thinks that maybe dealing with the police put some actual fear of consequences into her. We shall see. I will of course post any further updates if I receive any. Our final story is posted by Winnie Boy. Attempts to steal count, right? And it was cross-posted in Stolen Seats. This story happened a few years ago when I was about 13. So a bit of background. My relatives live in a city that's about an hour and 20 minutes flight from where I live. My parents and I used to go there every 3 months or so. However, sometimes my parents worked and I had to fly all alone. On the airline we took, if you flew alone and you were under the age of 14, you had to be an unaccompanied minor, which means a flight attendant would help you get to your gate and you would be able to board first. But the best part of being an unaccompanied minor is how you will usually get upgraded to first class if it's available so that the flight attendants can keep a closer eye on you. It's important to know that on flights that are shorter than 3 hours, a 2x2 formation. So I get in my seat that my parents paid for, a window seat, and next to me is the EM with a lap toddler. On the aisle seat in our row is her husband with another toddler. After everyone boarded the plane, the FA, flight attendant, comes over to me and says, "You're an unaccompanied minor, right?" Me. "Yeah." FA. "You've been upgraded to first class." Me. "Cool." The flight attendant didn't see the entitled mother's husband and thought that she was a single mom. Flight attendant. "Ma'am, there are 2 seats available if you would like another one." It was common for flight attendants to ask people next to someone with a priority if they wanted to get a first class seat too, if one was available. EM. "Sure. Can my husband come too?" Flight attendant turns around to see her husband. Flight attendant. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. There's not enough room for both of you." EM. "But why? You said there was 2 seats available." Flight attendant. "Yes, but one of them is taken by an unaccompanied minor." EM turns around and looks at me. EM. "He's big enough. He doesn't need those seats." Flight attendant. "And you need them?" EM. "Yes, I do. Do you not know how hard it is to raise not 1 but 2 children?" Flight attendant. "Ma'am, I do know how hard it is. I have children of my own." EM. "So you'll know why I need those seats more than he does." Flight attendant. "Ma'am, we are departing very soon and I need to bring this boy to the front of the plane. Now I need you to cooperate and let me bring this kid to his seat." EM. "Listen here, you idiot. My life is hard enough as it is, and I don't need your insults on top of that. We deserve those seats. Now give them to us now." Flight attendant. "All right, look kid, just come with me and we'll deal with her later." As I'm getting up, the EM pushes me back down into the seat. EM. "F you. You do not just ignore me like that. You're gonna give me those seats right effing now, you SOB." At this point, everyone on the plane is looking at her. Even though I didn't say anything, I was kind of scared. My mind was set on being anywhere but in a seat next to this psycho. So that's when I practically jumped out of my seat to the flight attendant. As I get in the aisle, the EM starts pulling on my shirt, bringing me back, and that's when I grab her arm and threw her off of me. EM. "How dare you touch me, you little brat. Now you have to give me your seat." Instead of listening to her, I went up to my seat in first class. I could still hear her screaming. Eventually, they deplaned her and her husband, which delayed the flight by 10 minutes. On the way out, the EM gave me the stink eye and said, "You're so selfish." After I told the story to my family, we all laughed about it. That's all the stories I have for today. Links to the original Reddit post will be in the description box below. Please stop on by Reddit to show the OP some love and an upvote. If you enjoy my videos, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell notification to let you know when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.